Welcome to your IM1 summer crash course. We're going to go over some things that you would skip if you were to go straight to IM2 and skip IM1. So this is a textbook that is used for IM1, and it's broken into modules and lessons. So you can see 2.4 represents module 2, lesson 4. We are talking about writing inequalities today. And it says an inequality is a statement that compares two expressions that aren't strictly equal by using these symbols. So it means that it's not only equal. It can be bigger or smaller, including those numbers, but it's not just equal. You've probably seen a sign at an amusement park saying something like, "You must be at least 48 inches tall to ride this ride." This statement is written as your height has to be greater or equal to 48 inches. Nora is planning a birthday party for her little sister Colleen. Nora's budget will allow her to spend no more than $50 for party supplies. 8 children, including Colleen, will attend the party, and Nora wants to determine how much she can spend on party favors for each child. She will also purchase a cake for $10. Write an inequality that represents this situation to find possible solutions. In A, it says, first let C represent the cost of a party favor for each child. Write an expression for the total cost of the party as a function of C. So we're going to start out by writing how many party favors we need, and that comes from the 8 children, so this should say 8C, plus we are buying a cake for $10. B says which inequality symbol should be used to represent the phrase no more than, and that is going to be less than or equal. It can be smaller, it can be equal, but it cannot be more than. C, write the inequality that represents Nora's budget goal. So you can see the function we just wrote with the symbol we just discussed, and her budget is no more than 50. Suppose Nora finds party favors that cost $4 each. Use a value of 4 for C and check if this inequality is true. So if we did that, this piece would be 32 plus 10, which is 42. And is 42 less than 50? Or less than or equal to 50? And that is true. All right, so then in part E, is it true? Yes. Could Nora buy $6 party favors for all of her guests without going over budget? So instead, we're going to replace that C with a 6. Plus the $10 cake. 8 times 6 is 48, plus 10, is that less than or equal to 50? No, she cannot. She would go over budget. Then it says, why does an inequality represent Nora's budget calculation better than an equation? The reason that we use an inequality is to represent that she can spend up to $50, but she doesn't have to spend all $50 that she is given. 2. The solution set of an inequality consists of all values that make the statement true. Describe the whole dollar amounts that are in the solution set for this equation. So she could buy $0 party favors, $1 party favors, $2 party favors, and, oh, not 6. 6 was too expensive. What about 5? 8 times 5 would be 40, plus 10 would be 50. So 5 is the maximum that she can spend. Then we're going to move on to the next example. It says you may need to use the distributive property before you can solve an inequality. So they've shown a sample of what the distributive property is. The inequality sign must be reversed when multiplying or dividing both sides of an inequality by a negative number. So that's just one little rule that we have to remember with inequalities. Example 1. Trina is buying 12 shirts for the drama club, and she will choose a style for the blank shirts and then pay an additional charge of $2.75 for each shirt to have the club logo. If Trina cannot spend more than $99, how much can she spend on each blank shirt? Write and solve an inequality to find the possible cost of each blank shirt. So she starts, she's going to spend the shirt blank plus the $2.75 for each logo, and then she distributes 12 times S and 12 times $2.75. Then working like you would in a regular equation, they're going to subtract 33 from both sides, leaving them with 12s and 66. They'll divide by 12, and they'll end up with s has to be less than or equal to 550. Now, they did not have to reverse the symbol in any of these because they did not multiply or divide by a negative. So the max she can spend on blanks is $5.50. Then they have to check their answer. So you can choose any value that's smaller than 5.5. They chose 5, and you see they plugged it back in. Then the cost for 12 shirts and 12 logos printed on the shirts would be $93, which is in fact less than or equal to 99, so it is true. In part B, it says Sergio needs to buy gifts for 8 friends. He wants to give the same gift to all his friends, and he plans to have the gift wrapped for an additional charge of $150 each. If Sergio spends at least $70, meaning he can spend more, he will receive free shipping on his order. Write and solve an inequality to determine how much Sergio needs to spend on each gift in order to receive free shipping. So we know he's buying 8 gifts, and he's also going to pay $1.50 to have them wrapped. So then they distribute. 8 times G would be 8G, and 8 times $1.50. So if you want to, you can do that in your head or in your calculator, which should be 12. And then it shows that they are going to subtract 12 from both sides. So we're left with 8G, and 70 minus 12 is 58. Then they divide both sides by 8, and 58 divided by 8 is 725. Maybe. There we go, 725. So then it says, simplify. We did that. Check your answer. Since G has to be greater than or equal to 725, we're going to check a number that's greater than 725. So we plugged in 8, it looks like. 8 plus 150 would be 950. And then 8 times 950 is 76, which is in fact greater than or equal to 70. So Sergio must spend at least $7.25 on each gift. Why is the first step in solving an inequality to use the distributive property instead of working inside the parentheses? We are trying to use algebra, so we have to simplify the problem so we can move things around. We can't figure out what's inside of the parentheses until after we take care of figuring out how much to spend on each person. So we figure out how much it's going to cost for all 8, and then we work backwards to figure out how much it is for each person. Then it says, Zachary is planning to send a video game to each of his 2 brothers. If he buys the same game for both brothers and pays $4.75 to ship each game, how much can he spend on each game without spending more than $100? Write and solve an inequality for this situation. I'm going to show my work over on the side since I don't have a ton of room in the paper. All right, so we know that he's going to spend less than or equal to $100 because he said he's going to spend without spending more than 100. He can spend 100 or less. He is planning to send a game to each of his 2 brothers. So there are 2 of them, and the package is going to include the game and the $4.75 to ship. We will distribute, giving us 2G and $9.50. Then we're going to subtract. These are going to be gone. That leaves us with $90.50. And then we'll divide by 2. So he can spend $45.25. No, less than or equal to $45.25. Now, let's go back and check. Did we ever multiply or divide by a negative? In this step, we subtracted, but we did not multiply or divide with a negative. And in this step, we divided, but we divided with a positive. So our symbol remains facing the same direction. Okay, now I'm going to clear this off to work through number 5 and number 6. We'll do number 5 over here and number 6 on this side. Now this is going to combine some aspects of that fraction busting in with inequalities. So I have 4/3 times 6x plus 9 is less than 4. So we'll distribute this in. 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 9 is 36. Then we're going to simplify those fractions. 24 divided by 3 is 8. And 36 divided by 3 is 12. So far I have not multiplied or divided by any negatives, so everything stays where it's at. Subtract 12. That leaves me with -8. Keep the symbol facing the same way. We're dividing by a +8, so it remains facing the same direction. And x is less than -1. Now on the other side, it says -2, and then we've got a 4th x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 5. So far I haven't multiplied or divided to both sides with a negative. I'm just doing the left with a negative, so nothing changes yet. This gives me -2/4 x. This would be -4 Now at this point, I can multiply everything by 4 to get rid of the fraction. I could reduce it to 1/2. You decide. I'm going to show you what it looks like to fraction bus just so you have an example. I'll multiply by 4. That would leave me with negative 2x, negative 16, and then 20. Keeping the same symbol. Add the 16 to both sides. Now I have negative 2x is greater than or equal to 36. Now at this step, this is where I'm going to start to divide by a negative, which means the symbol has to turn around. And x has to be less than or equal to negative 18. Explain number 2, creating and solving inequalities with variables on both sides. Some inequalities have variable terms on both sides of the symbol. We can solve these inequalities the same way that we just solved the rest of them, using those properties where we have to switch the symbol if we divide or multiply with a negative. Example 2 says the Daily Info charges a fee of $650 plus $80 per week to run an ad. The People's Paper charges $145 per week. For how many weeks must an ad run for the total cost at the Daily Info to be less expensive than the cost at the People's Paper? W represents the weeks the ad runs in the paper. So you can see here that they've written both expressions. We have the Daily Info on this side and the People's Paper over here. And they want the Daily Info to be less expensive, so they have that less than symbol. Then they're going to subtract 80W from both sides, leaving us with 65W, and these ones add to 0, so 650. Then they divide both sides by 65, and they end up with W is greater than 10. So you kind of read that one backwards if you want to rewrite it in a way where the variable is first. Just make sure your symbol is open to the W. The total cost at the Daily Info is less than the cost of the People's Paper if the ad runs for more than 10 weeks. B. The home cleaning company charges $312 to power wash the siding of a house, plus 12 for each window. So 312 plus 12 for each window. Power Clean charges $36 per window, which is demonstrated by 36W. How many windows must a house have to make the total cost from the home cleaning company less expensive than the Power Clean? So W is the number of windows. We are going to subtract 12W from both sides. So this makes 0, and 36 minus 12 leaves us with 24W. Then we will divide by 24 on both sides. And then 312 divided by 24 is 13. So we can rewrite it so the open mouth is facing the W, meaning it must have more than 13 windows for the company to be less expensive. How would the final inequality change if you divided by negative 24 in the last step? Then we would have the symbol facing the other way. So we would have W is less than negative 13. Because we would divide by a negative, leaving us with negative 13. And we would change the symbol. And it wouldn't make sense for it to be less than negative 13 weeks. So we would just say that they would never be less expensive. 8. The school band will sell pizzas to raise money for new uniforms. The supplier charges $100 plus 4 per pizza. Okay, so here we go. 100 plus 4 per pizza. The band member sell the pizzas for $7 each. Write and solve an inequality to find how many pizzas the band members have to sell to make a profit. So we want their 7p to come out to more than the amount that they paid. We are going to subtract 4p from both sides, leaving us with 3p to be more than $100. Divide by 3. P has to be greater than 33 and a third. All right. If you wanted it in terms of money, you could do $33.33. No, not 33 and a third cents. 33 and a third pizzas. Which means that they would have to buy 34 pizzas to make it worth it, to make a profit. Alright, this next step asks us about the phrases and which symbol we would use to match with them. Which inequality symbol would you use to represent the following words or phrases? A, at most, means it could be less than or equal. Farther than has to be greater than, younger than, less than, and up to. If you get to spend up to $50, you need to spend less than or equal to 50. And there's all kinds of different phrases. No more than, at least, fewer. There's a bunch of different phrases and words that use inequalities rather than equations. In 10, it says, how are the steps to solving an inequality similar to those for solving an equation, and how are they different? The algebra is all the same. The only difference is when you switch the symbol from multiplying or dividing by a negative. How can you write an inequality that represents a real-world situation? Well, we just demonstrated several. You start with building each expression and then comparing them with whatever symbol fits the problem. In the evaluate and homework practice section, I'm not going to do the whole video with you, but I will post my answers so that you can check your work. You do not have to do all of it. You can do some on here. You can do some on the Delta Math lessons. It's really up to you for how much you want to do. This whole thing is really not necessary. It's just extra practice to prepare you for IM2. The choice is yours. If you want to spend several hours working on it, by all means. If you're like, I think I've got it after 10 minutes, that's cool too. Good luck in IM2.